Hi everyone, it's Becky here. So today I'm behind the wheels on a day trip with my parents to Cultus Lake, which is around 2 hours drive from home. So Lake Cultus is located in the city of Chilliwack. And here I am after lunch with my parents. I'm sitting down at the picnic table closer to the lake, and here's my fresh new sketchbook. It's a Hannah Muel watercolor sketchbook, the first page spread, and then today I'm working on the second page spread. I've attached my gooseneck tripod to the edge of the picnic table, and I've got this pretty good view in front of me with so many people. Yeah, and it's actually nice to include some of the trees covering a bit of the landscape instead of just a clean landscape. So I'm starting to draw the first pine tree here, acting as a little frame. Starting with a bold trunk and then adding on these branches on both sides of the trunk, just like little claws. So when you're composing like a vacation sketch by a lake or a river or the sea, yeah, it's totally fine to include, something in the foreground, framing that landscape. So in this case, yeah, I'm including about 2 to 3 trees. Now, I just added those tree trunk texture using loose vertical organic strokes. Now, I'm drawing the second tree. Yeah, and the third tree is snuggled nice and close with the second one, adding the branches, like the most dominant ones that are really standing out to me on these trees. Again, we're sketching trees. You don't have to capture every single branch. Just take it easy. And the fourth tree, I think, is much younger than the other three. So the Cultus Lake is one of the vacation hotspots for people to come here for camping or just day trips. And so after noon, all the picnic tables were taken. It was actually hard to find one until after 3 p.m. And now I'm doing this sketch later in the afternoon until I found a picnic table with a good view. Now the trees are in. Now I'm drawing that horizontal line defining the base of a hill in the middle of the lake, and another horizontal line defining another hill. I think this one is more like a little mountain there in the back. Yeah, and it's so fun to draw in between the gaps of these trees. And this is how we can make composition more fun. Rather than just sketching a very clean view of a landscape, feel free to have some, foreground elements covering on top of it a little bit. Now, I'm doodling these vacation houses on the other side of Cultus Lake. And yeah, just keeping these lines very loose and simple. Windows could be little dots or rectangles and squares, bushes. And now I'm using much looser lines to define the trees behind the vacation houses on higher elevations, just to show a better sense of distance. Things far away, they could draw in a more blurred out shapes. Now I'm drawing these foliage on this hill. Again, these trees and bushes, they are much more far away compared to our foreground trees. So I think it's very important to use light and fluffy lines to define the foliage on these hills and mountains to effectively showing a sense of distance. So when you're sketching a landscape using a pen, I think this overlooked technique of using various hand pressure to generate different line weight is often overlooked. So for things closer up, you can press harder and boldly suggest your outlines. For details far away, like these, you can just relax your hand. You don't have to press down too hard all the time to get these loose shapes done. So as I'm doing the voiceover work of this sketch tutorial right now, later in July, I've already filled more than half of this sketchbook. I would say like 75% done of this sketchbook. But yeah, this summer I'm spending a lot more time sketching without filming too much, because filming too much of my sketching process all by myself would divert too much energy and attention from being creative and do better work. And I always appreciate all of your attention and support on my YouTube videos, and I will just try my best to film as often as I'm able to do. And yeah, now let's move on to the next stage of this line drawing. Now I'm adding some more fun details to add a sense of narrative. I just drew the canopy of a colorful umbrella and this walkway bridge, adding on some people ready to dive into the water. Yeah, and just doodle these people, keeping their heads very small. So when drawing people far away, I always like to start drawing the head first, which is usually like a quick dot. Yeah. And then adding on the legs for the walkway bridge. And some more people. Yeah, so this place is very family friendly with a lot of parents with their little kids. Now adding on a little boat drifting in the middle of the lake. And then I'm just waiting for these people to settle down here in the foreground, drawing some camping chairs and this man standing up, talking to his family member. And yeah, drawing another person on this collapsible chair here under the umbrella. So these are very quick, spontaneous sketches of my quick impressions of these people walking, sitting down, moving all the time. So these are very different interpretations from working from photos. And I'm finding drawing from real life to be more challenging, at the same time more fun, capturing people in much more lively gestures compared to working with static photos. Now, I'm drawing this vacant picnic table that the family just left from here. So after 3:30, a lot of people are departing because parking fee is like $5 per hour. So people are giving themselves time limit to stay here. And adding some more miscellaneous stuff. There's a bike over there, or a scooter. Another man standing and chatting. And here's a backpack. And now I need to add some more details on the left side of this sketch, the bottom left. I just drew one more little boat, and using very gentle lines to suggest the ripples on the lake, and a kayak. And now I'm drawing more foreground people here on the bottom left, sitting on their collapsible chairs, looking at the lake. And then, yeah, finishing the bottom part of this tree here with another picnic table. And drawing another person over here, yeah, just to fill in the blank here. And now I'm ready to move on to drawing the bank of the beach. And I want to add on more people walking on the little walkway bridge. And yeah, so this place is just full of life right now in the summer. Here I just finished my line drawing. It took me about 40 minutes or so to draw. Taking a break by sipping my tea, and then continue to paint it. So the lighting condition right now around 4 o'clock is actually good, because later in the afternoon you can see longer shadows showing more drama, and also a bit higher contrast as well compared to midday. So I'm using Daniel Smith's watercolor paint with 12 basic colors of my own selection. And I'm going to start painting the sky as usual by wetting it with a little clear water because I'm working with cold pressed paper, which is pretty rough. And then putting on a little bit of manganese blue mixed with a bit of cobalt blue. So manganese blue is very similar to cerulean blue. And then towards the lower part of the sky, I'm using a more diluted version and even blending in a little bit of spring green to get a turquoise green look for the late afternoon sky, which could be looking greener. So green is one of the 7 colors in the rainbow or the spectrum of light. So later in the day, more green could be filtered through the atmosphere. So that's why we could, sometimes see the sky as looking a little turquoise or even green later in the day. And now I'm painting the first layer of the lake using, again, very much the same colors as I painted the sky. Manganese blue and a little bit of spring green. Yeah, so later in the video when I'm painting in more details, you can see my process better because right now is the transition time of the sun passing through the branches right above me. So later in the video, yeah, I'll get like a full shadow projected onto my sketchbook. So no more hand shadows later on in the video. Now I just painted the first layer for the beach and the trees using diluted yellow ochre for the golden glow of the late afternoon sunshine. So now I'm doing an underpainting for the hill and the mountain area using yellow ochre and for some extremely bright areas, Indian yellow. As you can see, everything is glowing under the sun, yeah, on this hot summer day. And sitting in the shade on a hot day like this is just the best. And this is the first layer for everything below the sky. Now I'm adding on this warmer green, which is hooker's green mixed with more or less yellow ochre. So every few brush marks, I go back to the mini palette to remix the green a little bit. So some areas could have a much higher ratio of yellow ochre because the sun was hitting on some of those trees directly. And in general, to make your watercolor paintings more interesting is to avoid painting things too flatly. So try to mix 2 colors together at different ratios. For greens, it's never the same flat green. Now I'm moving on to adding a bit of shading colors for this hill by mixing burnt sienna into hooker's green. So later in the day, or like very early in the day after sunrise, you can see a lot of heavily shaded areas and very dark and long shadows. So yeah, this is what I see right now. Very strong shadows here and there on these foliage. And for that mountain in the back, the tone of those greens are very pale, and the greens are kind of muted into blue-violet. So now I'm using cobalt blue and imperial purple to blend into the brighter greens. And keeping this blue-violet light and gentle. So the overall tone for this mountain here, as you can see, the value is much lighter compared to the hill closer up. So now I'm using phthalo blue, which is like a new blue in my palette, other than just cobalt blue and manganese blue. So yeah, phthalo blue, as you can see, is a little bit more concentrated compared to the first layer. I'm also blending in a little bit of hooker's green into phthalo blue for these lively ripples closer up here on the right. I also switched to my medium tip water brush for these more refined brush marks of ripples. And according to the sense of distance, water bodies closer up to us could be looking greener. The areas a little far away could look bluer. So now it's time to have fun painting these people's bodies because everyone is wearing their swimming suits. So there are a lot of skin colors showing. So for skin colors, I simply mixed orange with cadmium red and diluted with a lot of water to get the peachy skin color. So I painted the man's shorts standing in the foreground using pure cadmium red to attract the viewers into this sketch. Now it's time to paint and shade the trees at the same time. So now I'm playing with burnt sienna and also using a lot of imperial purple to shade the burnt sienna because these trees are very much like silhouettes now in the backlighting condition. Yeah, starting with gentle burnt sienna and much more concentrated imperial purple mixed with burnt sienna. And for me, I don't like to paint silhouettes in absolute flat shapes. So overall, these trees are much, much darker compared to the sky and the greens and the water behind them. And I'm gonna paint the pine tree needles directly with these loose little brush marks, starting with a warmer green, which is yellow ochre mixed with spring green. So these pine needles are illuminated in the evening sunlight. And so these piles of pine needles are looking much more transparent compared to when they're shaded. And yeah, just a fun fact for you, I'm actually allergic to the pollen of pine trees. So every time I come back from the forest with lots of pine trees, my pollen allergy just started to attack me. Okay, so that's the light tones. Now I'm adding on the darker tones just to suggest a sense of volume. And so this is pretty much hooker's green mixed with a little bit of yellow ochre. So for leaves in the foreground area, so sometimes I think it's a better idea to not draw them with my fine liner pen. Otherwise, the line work's going to be competing with the background, which is the main subject, the landscape. And same for some other little elements in your sketch. You don't have to fine line and detailing everything with your pen. So yeah, for some areas, feel free to just leave it for the brushwork. And now I'm adding bits of fancy colors like red, orange, and blue for that umbrella there. And now I want to pay more attention to the foreground area by painting the people and adding some lovely long shadows on the beach. So using a lot of cobalt blue and imperial purple, mixing these two colors together to paint those black chairs and the long shadows of these people, the chairs, and everything else. So again, as I mentioned before, later on in the day is a very ideal time for painting because we get to see long and dramatic shadows. I'm also adding some blue tones for the ripples on the lake. And it's time to paint these vacation houses using leftover brown and then shade one side of each of these houses with leftover blue violet. And now I also want to add some final shading for the foliage on the hill. And I'm using hooker's green with a little bit of burnt sienna mixed in there, fading off the harsh brush marks a little bit. It can be very convenient to paint with a good quality water brush. You can keep dragging it to fade out some of the harsh brush marks that you just made. And adding some stronger punches of green shade for these bigger trees. They're closer up behind the vacation houses. And yeah, so around later in the afternoon, early evening before sunset, we see very high contrast. It can be quite difficult to paint during midday when the sun is shining directly straight from the sky and everything is flat, all too bright. So the most ideal times to paint or to take reference photos is earlier in the day, maybe from 7 to 10 in the morning, and later in the day from 3 to 4 in the afternoon until close to sunset. So here's a look of my finished sketch of the Cultus Lake in between the pine trees, sitting at a picnic table. So thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. I hope you're still enjoying your summer. See you soon next time. Bye.